"Help my child tonight. I'll help you too, Cowboy," said the widowed Apache woman. She stirred her small fire, carefully adding a few dry sticks she had collected the day before. The smoke rose slowly into the pale sky, curling and fading into the distance. It was another day in the wide, harsh land she called home, a land both beautiful and unforgiving. Naomi had lived here all her life, but now, without her husband, every day was a struggle. Her son, Tay, was still asleep on a small mat near the fire. He had the same dark hair and wide eyes that reminded Naomi so much of his father. She watched him for a moment, feeling both pride and worry. Pride because he was strong and clever for his age, and worry because the world was not kind to children, especially children growing up in the unforgiving desert. She whispered his name gently and he stirred, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Time to wake up, my little one," Naomi said softly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. Tay sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, and yawned. "I smell the fire," he said, his voice still thick with sleep. Naomi smiled faintly. The small comforts of life, like a warm fire, were treasures she had learned to cherish. They shared a quiet breakfast. Naomi had prepared a simple meal of cornmeal porridge, flavored with a few dried berries she had saved from the last harvest. Food was never plenty, and each meal required careful planning and effort. Tay ate slowly, his small hands moving the spoon carefully, while Naomi watched him, silently counting the moments of peace before the day's work began. After breakfast, Naomi and Tay began their daily tasks. Naomi's responsibilities were endless. She collected firewood, tended the small patch of plants that grew near their dwelling, and kept a watchful eye on Tay as he helped where he could. The boy carried small bundles of kindling, his small frame moving with determination that often surprised Naomi. She had to remind herself not to push him too hard, but the desert demanded strength and endurance from everyone, no matter their age. As they worked, Naomi remembered her husband. His name was Kiona, and he had been brave, strong, and kind. He had taught Tay to track animals, to respect the land, and to understand the quiet messages of nature. Naomi's heart ached with his absence, but she knew she had to continue for Tay. Every action, every small effort she made was for him. She whispered a quiet prayer for strength, hoping the winds of the desert would carry her words to the spirit of her beloved husband. Life in the desert was not easy. Water was scarce, and Naomi had learned to find it where others would not think to look. She taught Tay how to read the land, how to notice the small signs of moisture and life. They walked for miles sometimes, searching for wild plants or a hidden spring. Naomi's eyes were sharp, and her memory of the land was precise. She had to be. A single mistake could mean serious trouble for her and Tay. Despite the hardship, Naomi tried to give Tay a sense of normalcy. They shared stories of their ancestors, told in the soft, lilting voice that carried both love and wisdom. She reminded him of the bravery and resilience that ran through their family. Tay listened with wide eyes, imagining the stories as though he were part of them. Naomi knew these stories were more than entertainment. They were lessons in courage, patience, and kindness. One morning, as they were collecting firewood near a small ravine, Naomi noticed tracks in the sand. She knelt, her fingers brushing over the impressions left behind. Her heart beat faster. The tracks were fresh and they were not familiar. She pulled Tay close, speaking in a low voice. "Someone has been here recently, my child. We must be careful." Tay's eyes widened, but he trusted his mother completely. Naomi had raised him to be aware of the dangers around them but never to live in fear. She taught him that knowledge and preparation were their greatest protection. Together, they moved cautiously, avoiding the main path, keeping to the hidden edges of the land. Naomi's mind raced with possibilities: travelers, traders, or perhaps something more dangerous. She could not know, but she had to be ready. Later that day, they returned home with their small bundle of firewood. Naomi set it carefully by the fire while Tay sat nearby watching her. "Mama," he asked, "will we ever be safe again?" Naomi's heart tightened. How could she explain the world's dangers without making him afraid? She knelt beside him and took his small hands in hers. "My little one," she said gently, "the world is not always kind, but we are strong. You have my heart and I will protect you. We will face the days together and we will find our way. Fear is a shadow. Courage is the light we carry in our hearts." Tay nodded slowly, absorbing her words. Naomi smiled faintly, feeling a spark of hope. Even in the hardest moments, she had to nurture this hope, for both their sakes. She could not allow despair to take root. That evening, Naomi prepared a small meal from the last of their supplies. She had hunted a rabbit the day before and had managed to gather a few edible roots and wild herbs. Cooking over the fire, she reflected on the delicate balance of life. Every meal, every clean breath of air was a victory. She often thought about her husband's words, how he had taught her to honor the land and to take only what they needed. She tried to live by that wisdom, even in hardship. As Tay ate, Naomi noticed his gaze on the horizon. Children had a way of seeing more than adults sometimes, noticing the subtleties of movement or change in the world. Naomi followed his gaze and saw a thin wisp of dust rising far in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat. She did not know who it was, but instinct told her to remain cautious. After the meal, Naomi and Tay settled down near the fire. The night in the desert was always cold, and the stars stretched endlessly across the sky. Naomi told Tay a story of the stars and their ancestors, speaking in the quiet, comforting tone she always used. Her voice carried a sense of history, of knowledge passed down through generations. Tay listened, captivated, feeling the warmth of his mother's presence and the strange magic of the night sky. As Tay fell asleep, Naomi remained awake, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond their small dwelling. She thought of the tracks she had seen earlier and of the wisp of dust on the horizon. The world was full of danger, but also full of beauty, and Naomi knew that to survive, they had to respect both. She whispered a prayer of gratitude for their safety that day and asked for guidance for the days to come. Naomi's life was one of constant vigilance and care, but also of quiet triumphs. Every day she managed to feed and protect her child was a victory. Every lesson she imparted to Tay was a seed of hope, growing slowly but surely. She knew that her role was not only to keep him alive, but to prepare him for a life of strength, courage, and compassion. The desert could be harsh, but Naomi had learned to see it as a teacher. Every challenge, every struggle was an opportunity to grow stronger. And through it all, she and Tay shared an unbreakable bond, a bond forged through love, resilience, and mutual trust. Naomi often looked at her son and marveled at how much he had grown, how much he had already learned. She felt a sense of quiet pride and deep responsibility. As the night deepened, Naomi finally allowed herself a moment of rest. The fire dwindled to glowing embers, and the stars shone like distant, watchful eyes. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she and Tay would face them together. Her thoughts lingered on her husband, on the lessons he had taught them, and on the legacy of courage and love she was building for her son. In the quiet of the night, with Tay asleep at her side, Naomi felt a small, steady flame of hope within her heart. No matter the hardships, no matter the dangers that might come, she would protect her child. She would teach him, guide him, and help him grow into the man she knew he could become. The desert might be vast and unforgiving, but it was also a place where courage and love could thrive. And Naomi had both in abundance. The first part of their journey had begun, filled with hardship and learning, yet rich with love and resilience. Naomi knew this was only the start, and though the world was uncertain, she had faith in their strength. In the quiet, under the watchful stars, mother and son rested, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Naomi and Tay set out early, as was their habit. The desert sun had not yet risen fully, and the air carried a quiet chill that made Naomi wrap her shawl tightly around her shoulders. Tay followed closely, carrying a small bundle of firewood. Despite their hardships, Naomi always tried to make each day purposeful, teaching Tay not only to survive, but also to notice the small wonders of the land around them. The wind carried the smell of sagebrush and dry earth, and the distant mountains appeared purple and golden in the early light. As they walked along a narrow path near the riverbed, Naomi noticed something unusual. A figure was lying in the sand a short distance away, half hidden by a small ridge. Her heart skipped a beat. At first, she thought it might be a traveler resting, but as she drew closer, she saw that the man was motionless, and the way his body was positioned told her he was in trouble. Naomi motioned for Tay to stay behind a small bush and moved forward carefully. The man was a young cowboy, his clothes dusty and torn, and a deep cut ran across his arm. Naomi knelt beside him and gently shook his shoulder. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked softly. He groaned and opened his eyes slowly, confusion and pain clear in his gaze. "Help, please," he whispered. Naomi's heart ached at the sight of him. She had learned long ago that kindness was as necessary as water in this land. Tay watched silently from behind the bush, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. Naomi glanced back at him, giving a small, reassuring nod. "Stay here, my little one," she whispered. "I will take care of him." Tay obeyed, trusting his mother completely. Carefully, Naomi helped the cowboy to his feet and guided him toward a shaded area. "My name is Naomi," she said quietly. "This is my son, Tay. You are safe here." The man nodded weakly. "James, my name is James," he said, his voice rough from exhaustion. Naomi noticed the suspicion in his eyes. He was not used to strangers offering help, especially a woman and a child. But Naomi remained calm, her voice steady and kind. "Tonight, I will help you too, cowboy," she said, remembering the words she often whispered to herself when offering care to those in need. James managed a faint, almost imperceptible smile, though the pain in his arm made it difficult for him to relax. Naomi carefully cleaned the wound with water she had brought from a small canteen and wrapped it with cloth she had sewn herself. She worked quickly but gently, ensuring he was as comfortable as possible. As Naomi tended to James, Tay approached cautiously, carrying a small cup of water. "Here, sir," he said softly. Naomi smiled at her son. "Thank you, Tay. You are very brave." James took the cup with a weak hand and drank slowly, feeling some relief from the dryness that had made his throat raw. The cowboy began to speak between breaths, explaining that he had been traveling through the area when bandits had ambushed him. He had been robbed and his horse had run off. Naomi listened carefully, her eyes narrowing slightly at the mention of bandits. Danger was never far in this land, and Naomi knew she had to protect her son and this man who had come to them in need. "Do not worry," Naomi said firmly. "You are safe here, but we must be cautious. The desert is wide, but danger can find you even in the quietest places." She did not speak of the fears she felt, for she knew that showing too much worry could unsettle Tay or the cowboy. Instead, she focused on practical steps, securing water, tending the wound, and finding a temporary shelter for the night. Over the next few hours, Naomi and Tay worked together to prepare a small area near their dwelling for James. They cleared the ground of stones, arranged a blanket for him to lie on, and made a small fire to keep him warm. Naomi spoke gently to James, asking him to rest while she and Tay prepared a simple meal of roasted roots and dried corn. The smell of food seemed to bring him back to life slightly, and he managed a faint smile as he ate slowly. Tay watched him carefully, his young mind filled with questions. "Mama," he asked quietly, "why is he hurt? Did someone hurt him on purpose?" Naomi placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, my little one, people do bad things, but it is not our place to hate them. We help those who need help, even if they are strangers. That is how courage and kindness grow. As the sun climbed higher, James began to regain some strength. He spoke more clearly now, telling Naomi about his journey and how he had been searching for work to support his family far away. Naomi listened, feeling a connection to him despite their differences. She could see that he was not a cruel man, only unlucky and tired from the hardships of the world. The afternoon passed quietly. Naomi taught Tay small survival skills, demonstrating how to find clean water in shallow streams and how to notice the tracks of animals. James watched from his blanket, fascinated by the knowledge Naomi had passed down through generations. He realized that she was more than a mother. She was a guide, a protector, and a teacher. Her eyes were sharp, her movements precise, and her heart full of determination. As the sky turned shades of pink and orange with the setting sun, Naomi spoke softly to James. "You must rest now. The night can be dangerous and we need your strength for tomorrow." James nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. He lay down on the blanket, feeling the warmth of the fire and the quiet reassurance of Naomi's presence. Tay curled up near his mother, watching the cowboy with interest and curiosity. Night came slowly, and with it, a sense of calm mixed with tension. Naomi kept the fire burning and watched the shadows around them carefully. She knew that bandits could return or other dangers could approach, and she was ready. But she also knew that compassion was a form of strength. By helping James, she was not only offering safety to him but also teaching Tay the importance of empathy, courage, and trust. At one point, James tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his arm. "I should leave," he said quietly, his pride speaking louder than his exhaustion. Naomi shook her head firmly. "No, cowboy, not tonight. You are weak and the night is not safe. You will stay here. I will help you just as I have promised. You must trust me." James hesitated, then nodded, realizing he had no choice but to rely on her care. Tay, sensing the tension, whispered, "Mama, will he be okay?" Naomi smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Yes, my little one, we will make sure he is safe." Courage is not only in fighting, but also in knowing when to accept help. Tay's eyes shone with understanding, and he settled back beside his mother, feeling a little braver for having witnessed her care and wisdom. As the night deepened, Naomi quietly prepared a small portion of food for the cowboy to eat later. She watched the stars above, thinking of her husband and the lessons he had taught her about strength, kindness, and survival. She whispered a quiet promise to herself and to the boy sleeping near her. She would protect them both, no matter the cost. During the night, Naomi woke several times to check on James. Each time she adjusted the blankets, added a few sticks to the fire, and made sure Tay remained safe. She noticed the cowboy's breathing growing steadier, and she felt a small sense of relief. Though danger could come at any moment, she knew that this night at least they would survive. Her heart felt both heavy and full, carrying the weight of responsibility and the joy of helping another human being. By the time the first light of dawn appeared, James was sitting up, feeling stronger and more alert. Naomi handed him a small cup of water and a portion of food. "You have done well," she said gently. "Rested well, and now you are stronger. Tomorrow we will plan your journey forward." James nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. He understood now that Naomi's help was not just a kindness, it was a lifeline. Tay watched quietly, learning more from the events of the night than any lesson could teach. He saw his mother's courage, her wisdom, and her generosity. He saw how she could care for someone in need, even when the world was harsh and unforgiving. And he felt proud to be her son, knowing that he too was learning the values of compassion, bravery, and trust. Naomi looked at both of them, feeling a quiet sense of hope. Life was never simple and challenges would continue to come, but she had kept her promise as she always tried to do. "Tonight, I helped you, cowboy," she thought, "and I will help again if I must." This is how we survive, this is how we live, with courage and kindness together. The morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the desert. Naomi, Tay, and James sat quietly, each lost in their thoughts but connected by the bond that had formed over a single night. They had faced the hardships together, learned from one another, and survived the first of what would become many challenges in this unforgiving land. And though the world outside remained uncertain and sometimes dangerous, Naomi felt a renewed strength. She knew that as long as she had her son and the ability to help those in need, there was hope. They would face the days ahead together, ready to meet whatever trials came with courage, wisdom, and compassion. The day after the cowboys' arrival, Naomi woke before the sun had risen, as usual. Her mind was restless. Though James seemed stronger now, she could not shake the feeling that danger was near. The tracks she had noticed earlier and the stories James had told about bandits made her cautious. She knew the desert was vast, but it was also full of surprises and dangers that could appear without warning. She had survived many challenges before, and she intended to teach Tay the same lessons in vigilance and courage. Tay was already awake, sitting quietly on a small mat near the fire. He looked at his mother, sensing that something important was on her mind. Naomi smiled gently at him, brushing back his hair. "We have a long day ahead, my little one," she said. "We must prepare for anything, and we must be careful. Today, you will learn how to watch and listen to the land, and how to protect yourself and others." After a simple breakfast of cornmeal porridge and dried fruit, Naomi and Tay began their morning tasks. She taught him how to read the wind and the sand, how to notice subtle changes in the environment that might indicate the presence of other people or animals. Tay watched her closely, absorbing each lesson like a sponge. Naomi knew that knowledge was as important as strength in these lands. A single misstep could lead to danger, and she wanted Tay to be ready for life, no matter what came. Meanwhile, James was resting, regaining his strength from the previous day's ordeal. Naomi had prepared a place for him near the fire, and though he felt weak, he was determined to show that he could be useful. Naomi noticed the hesitation in his eyes and spoke gently. "You are recovering, James, but there is more to strength than physical ability. Wisdom, patience, and careful thought are just as important. Today, you will learn from us, as we will learn from you." James nodded, understanding that her words carried more than simple advice. They were lessons in survival and trust. By mid-morning, Naomi had decided it was time to move to a safer location. Though their small shelter had been sufficient for the night, she knew the bandits might still be nearby. She needed to find a place that offered better protection and a clear view of the surrounding land. "We must move," she told Tay and James. "Follow my lead and stay close. Watch carefully and do not speak unless you must. We do not want to be noticed." The journey was slow and careful. Naomi led them along hidden paths, avoiding obvious trails where travelers or bandits might pass. She taught Tay to keep low and silent, moving with the rhythm of the land. James followed, learning to observe rather than act, his respect for Naomi's skill growing with every step. The desert around them was both beautiful and unforgiving. Rocky hills, sparse vegetation, and scattered cacti made the journey challenging, but Naomi navigated it with ease, as though the land itself spoke to her. At one point, Naomi stopped and knelt near a small cluster of rocks. She pointed to the ground, showing Tay tracks that had not been there the day before. "See this," she whispered. "Someone has passed through recently. They may be the same people who attacked you, James. We must be even more careful." Tay's eyes widened, but he did not panic. Naomi's calmness reassured him, and he followed her instructions carefully, moving with measured steps and listening for any unusual sounds. As the day wore on, Naomi noticed signs of movement in the distance, dust rising along a ridge, shadows that did not belong to the rocks. Her heart beat faster, but she kept her voice steady. "Stay close," she whispered to James and Tay. "We may need to act quickly. Watch the land and trust your senses." James felt a surge of nervousness. He had faced danger before, but he had never relied so completely on someone else's guidance. Naomi's calm authority gave him confidence, though the tension was undeniable. They continued moving until they reached a small canyon, its walls high enough to provide shelter and a clear view of the surrounding desert. Naomi chose this spot carefully. It offered protection from the sun, concealment from potential threats, and an elevated vantage point to spot approaching danger. She directed James to help her arrange a small area for rest, while Tay gathered firewood and small stones to create a perimeter. Naomi's mind was alert as she worked. She knew that the bandits could strike at any moment, and she planned for every possibility. She also taught Tay how to prepare for an attack without showing fear. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she explained quietly. "It is the knowledge that you can face danger and protect those you love." Tay nodded, understanding that these lessons were not just for today, they were lessons for life. As the afternoon faded, Naomi sat with James and Tay, explaining her plan. "If the bandits come, we will not fight unless we must," she said. "We will use the land to our advantage. We will hide, move quietly, and protect ourselves. Strength alone cannot save us. Knowledge, patience, and cooperation are what will keep us safe." James listened intently. He had relied on physical strength in the past, but Naomi's approach was different. It required patience, observation, and trust in one another. Tay helped Naomi prepare small traps and signals to alert them to approaching danger. They used rocks, sticks, and sand, creating quiet systems that could give them an advantage without being noticed. Naomi praised Tay's cleverness and patience, noting that even small minds could contribute to safety when guided with care. James watched, impressed by the mother and son's teamwork and ingenuity. As the sun began to set, the desert took on a deep orange and purple glow. Naomi and Tay had finished their preparations, and James felt stronger and more confident than he had since the attack. Naomi reminded them that the night could bring challenges and that vigilance was essential. She spoke softly to James. "Tonight, you must trust us. We will help you, but you must also trust your instincts and follow our guidance." James nodded, feeling a bond growing between them. The first signs of movement appeared as darkness fell. Naomi noticed shadows shifting along the canyon's edges and the faint sound of footsteps. She signaled for Tay and James to stay quiet and watch carefully. Her heart raced, but her voice remained calm as she whispered instructions. "Stay low, watch the shadows. Move only if I tell you." The tension in the canyon was thick, every sound amplified in the still night air. The bandits appeared, moving slowly along the ridge above them. Naomi observed them carefully, counting their numbers and noting their positions. She signaled to Tay and James, showing them how to remain hidden while monitoring the threat. The three of them were small figures against the vast desert, but Naomi's skill and knowledge of the land gave them an advantage. For hours they remained hidden, watching the bandits' movements. Naomi whispered guidance, teaching Tay how to predict the bandits' path and how to remain calm under pressure. James began to understand the depth of her experience and the wisdom behind her careful planning. He realized that survival was not about fighting first, but about observing, understanding, and acting at the right moment. Finally, Naomi saw an opportunity. The bandits were distracted by a small movement in the distance, and she quietly led Tay and James along a hidden path that allowed them to move closer to safety. She showed James how to step lightly, how to use the rocks and shadows for cover, and how to anticipate danger without panicking. The journey was tense, but every step was calculated and careful. By the time they reached a safer location, a small hollow in the canyon wall, Naomi allowed herself a moment of relief. They had avoided confrontation and remained unseen, their planning and patience paying off. James felt a deep respect for Naomi and Tay, realizing that courage came in many forms, not just in fighting but in knowledge, preparation, and careful action. As they settled for the night, Naomi spoke softly to James and Tay. "You have done well today. You have learned that courage and patience can save lives. Remember these lessons. The world is full of challenges, but together we can face them." Tay looked at his mother with wide eyes, feeling proud of his role in their survival. James nodded, feeling gratitude and admiration for the woman who had taught him more in one day than he had learned in years of wandering alone. The night passed quietly, with Naomi keeping watch and the two younger travelers resting. She reflected on the day's events, feeling a mix of relief and determination. The desert would continue to test them, but she was ready. She had taught Tay to be vigilant, to trust his instincts, and to act with courage. She had shown James that strength could take many forms, and that survival often depended on wisdom, patience, and teamwork. When the first light of dawn touched the canyon walls, Naomi allowed herself a quiet smile. The night had been difficult, but they had succeeded. They were stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. Naomi knew that challenges would continue, but she also knew that with courage, careful thought, and the bonds of trust, they could face whatever came next. The desert night was quiet, but Naomi knew that stillness could be deceiving. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the faint scent of sage and dust, and the stars shone like silent, watchful eyes overhead. Naomi had chosen their hiding place carefully, but she remained alert, scanning every shadow and listening for the slightest unusual sound. She sat near the small fire, its glow illuminating her face as she glanced at Tay and James, who were resting but aware that the night might bring challenges. Tay stirred beside her, his young face serious in the firelight. Naomi placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Stay close to me, my little one. Remember everything I taught you. Watch, listen, and stay calm." Tay nodded, gripping her hand tightly. His small eyes were wide, but he had learned to trust his mother's guidance completely. Naomi felt a surge of pride. Her son was learning not just to survive, but to face the world with courage and intelligence. James shifted on the blanket, wincing slightly as he adjusted the bandage on his arm. He was stronger now, but the events of the day and the threat of bandits kept him tense. Naomi noticed his unease and spoke softly. "Tonight, you must trust us. We know this land. We know how to protect ourselves. Follow our lead and we will get through this safely." James nodded, understanding that his survival depended not only on his own strength, but also on his willingness to observe, listen, and cooperate. Hours passed slowly. The wind carried the distant sounds of animals and the occasional rustle of desert plants, but Naomi's sharp eyes detected something unusual, a faint movement along the ridge above them. She froze, signaling for Tay and James to do the same. The shadows shifted slightly, and Naomi recognized the figures of men, bandits, moving carefully but purposefully. Her heart beat faster, but her voice remained calm as she whispered instructions. "Stay hidden. Do not make a sound. We will watch and wait. Only move if I tell you." Tay crouched low beside her, his small body trembling slightly, but he obeyed. James's hands tightened on the blanket beneath him, his jaw firm. Naomi could feel his tension, and she knew he was learning the meaning of patience and strategy in the harshest way possible. The bandits moved slowly, scanning the area, but they did not see the three figures hiding in the shadows. Naomi watched them carefully, noting their numbers, their positions, and their movements. Every instinct in her body told her that the night could turn dangerous at any moment. She whispered to Tay, showing him how to observe without being noticed, how to anticipate danger without panicking. The boy's eyes were sharp and alert, reflecting the lessons she had patiently taught him. Hours passed, and the tension grew. Naomi could sense the bandits moving closer to the canyon, their footsteps quiet but deliberate. She whispered instructions to James, teaching him to stay low and use the terrain for cover. James felt a strange mix of fear and admiration. He had faced danger before, but never in this way. never relying so completely on the wisdom and skill of another. Naomi's calm authority gave him strength, even as his own nerves strained against the tension. At one point, one of the bandits paused, seemingly sensing something unusual. Naomi froze, her body tense, and signaled for Tay and James to remain still. The man scanned the area, his eyes sharp, but he did not see them. Naomi held her breath, willing the minutes to pass slowly. Finally, the bandit moved on and Naomi exhaled quietly, releasing the tension that had built up in her chest. She whispered softly to Tay, praising his patience and courage. The boy felt a surge of pride, realizing that he had contributed to their safety simply by listening and observing. As the night deepened, Naomi made a plan. She knew they could not remain in the same spot forever, and she needed to create a small diversion to ensure their safety. She instructed James to gather some dry sticks and arrange them in a narrow path slightly away from their hiding place. Naomi and Tay prepared small traps using stones and sand, designed to make noise if the bandits came too close. Every detail was carefully planned, every movement deliberate. When the bandits approached the area where Naomi had placed the sticks, one of them stepped on them, causing a small, controlled noise. The men paused, confused, and began to investigate. Naomi used the opportunity to signal Tay and James to move quietly to a safer spot deeper in the canyon. They followed her instructions perfectly, moving with the quiet precision she had taught them. The bandits, distracted by the noise, did not notice the three figures slipping away. The hours stretched on. Naomi, Tay, and James remained hidden, occasionally adjusting their positions to remain out of sight. The bandits continued to search the area, but Naomi's knowledge of the land and careful planning kept them safe. She whispered guidance to Tay, teaching him how to anticipate danger, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to act only when necessary. James, observing closely, began to understand the depth of Naomi's experience and the value of careful thinking over reckless action. Finally, the bandits moved away, leaving the canyon as quietly as they had arrived. Naomi allowed herself a moment of relief, but she remained cautious. The night was not yet over, and the desert could bring unexpected challenges. She checked Tay and James, making sure they were safe and calm. The boy's eyes shone with pride and relief, and James nodded silently, feeling gratitude and admiration for the woman who had guided them through the night. Naomi prepared a small meal for them, using the last of their supplies. They ate quietly, aware that the night's danger had not fully passed. Naomi spoke softly to both of them, praising their courage and patience. "You have done well tonight," she said. "You have stayed calm, followed instructions, and used your minds as well as your strength. Remember these lessons. The world can be dangerous, but together we can face it." Tay listened carefully, feeling the weight and importance of her words. He had learned that courage was not just about facing danger with strength, but also about patience, observation, and trust. James reflected on the night's events, realizing that he had underestimated the power of knowledge, preparation, and teamwork. Naomi had taught them both a lesson they would not forget. As the first light of dawn touched the canyon walls, Naomi allowed herself a quiet smile. The night had been long and tense, but they had survived. She looked at Tay, asleep but safe, and at James, resting quietly beside her. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged through shared experience and trust. Naomi felt a deep sense of pride and relief. She knew the bandits might return, and that more challenges awaited them in the desert, but she also knew that they had learned important lessons. Naomi had taught Tay to be vigilant, to trust his instincts, and to remain calm under pressure. She had shown James that courage came in many forms, not just through physical strength, but through careful thought, observation, and cooperation. The desert was vast and unforgiving, but it was also a place of learning and growth. Naomi reflected on the night, feeling gratitude for the lessons she had imparted, and for the courage she had witnessed in both Tay and James. The trials they faced together had strengthened their bond and prepared them for the challenges ahead. By mid-morning, Naomi decided it was time to move again. Though the immediate danger had passed, she knew it was best to find a more secure location with fresh water and food sources. She guided Tay and James carefully, using the paths and techniques she had taught them. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to minimize risk. Along the way, Naomi shared stories with Tay and James about her ancestors, about their resilience and wisdom in the face of adversity. These stories were more than just tales. They were lessons in courage, strategy, and survival. Tay listened with wide eyes, absorbing the stories and connecting them to the events of the past night. James, too, felt inspired by the wisdom and experience Naomi shared. By the time they reached a small hidden spring, Naomi allowed herself a moment of relief. The water was clean and refreshing, and the area offered a safe place to rest and prepare for the next part of their journey. Naomi taught Tay and James how to gather water carefully, how to stay hidden while collecting resources, and how to maintain vigilance even in moments of comfort. As they settled near the spring, Naomi reflected on the night's events. She had kept her promise to protect Tay and James, using skill, knowledge, and courage rather than brute force. The experience had strengthened their trust in one another and taught invaluable lessons in patience, observation, and strategy. Naomi felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that they had survived a night of danger and learned from it. Tay sat beside her, his small hands holding a cup of water. "Mama," he whispered, "we were very brave tonight, weren't we?" Naomi smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Yes, my little one, we were brave together. But remember, bravery is not just about facing danger. It is also about thinking, planning, and caring for others. Tonight, we showed courage in all these ways." James nodded silently, feeling a deep respect for Naomi and the lessons she had imparted. He realized that he had learned more about courage and survival in one night than in all his years of traveling alone. He had witnessed a true example of leadership, wisdom, and compassion. The desert around them was quiet once more, the danger having passed for now. Naomi, Tay, and James rested near the spring, knowing that more challenges awaited but confident in their ability to face them together. Naomi's heart was full, not just with relief, but with hope. They had survived, they had learned, and they had grown stronger. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the desert. Naomi stirred first, as was her habit, her eyes scanning the quiet landscape. The night had passed without incident, but she knew the desert could change in an instant. She moved carefully, making sure Tay and James were awake and alert. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of wild herbs and dust. Naomi felt a quiet sense of relief. They had survived the night, and for the first time in several days she allowed herself a small smile. Tay blinked sleep from his eyes and rubbed his face. "Mama," he whispered, "did we really face danger last night?" Naomi nodded, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, my little one, but you were brave. You followed my guidance and stayed calm. That courage will stay with you forever." Tay smiled faintly, pride shining in his young eyes. Naomi's heart swelled. Even in the harshest circumstances, she had managed to teach her son lessons that would carry him through life. James stretched beside the fire, his arm bandaged but healing. He had slept deeply for the first time since the ambush, feeling the comfort of safety and care. He looked at Naomi and Tay, feeling gratitude and admiration. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. Naomi shook her head. "No thanks are needed, James. Helping one another is how we survive. Tonight, we were stronger because we trusted each other." James nodded, realizing that her words carried a truth he had only begun to understand. Strength came not just from skill or power, but from trust, patience, and compassion. After a simple breakfast of dried corn, roasted roots, and water, Naomi began to prepare for the day. She knew they could not stay at the spring forever. Supplies were limited, and though the immediate danger of the bandits had passed, they needed to move to a safer, more sustainable location. Naomi instructed James and Tay to gather small bundles of firewood and food for the journey. She watched carefully as James followed her directions, noting his growing understanding of survival in the desert. Before they set out, Naomi knelt beside Tay. "Remember, my little one, courage is not just about fighting or running. It is about knowing your strengths, using your mind, and protecting those you love. Keep this in your heart always." Tay nodded solemnly, understanding that these words were more than advice, they were a guide for life. Naomi smiled faintly, feeling hope for her son's future. The journey to a safer location was slow but steady. Naomi led them through hidden paths, avoiding obvious trails and making use of natural cover. She taught Tay and James how to move silently, how to read the terrain, and how to anticipate potential dangers. James found himself learning skills he had never known before, skills that would serve him well for the rest of his life. He began to see Naomi not just as a protector, but as a teacher, and he felt grateful for the lessons she offered with patience and care. By midday, they reached a small canyon with a natural spring and a sheltered area that could provide safety and access to food. Naomi guided them carefully, using her knowledge of the land to ensure that the spot offered clear visibility and escape routes. She showed Tay how to gather food and water without leaving obvious signs of their presence. James observed closely, realizing that this method of careful planning and awareness was far more effective than rushing or relying solely on strength. As they rested, Naomi shared stories of her ancestors with Tay and James. She spoke of courage, wisdom, and survival, telling tales of men and women who had faced challenges with patience and intelligence. Tay listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. James was equally captivated, realizing that these stories were not just history, they were lessons for living. Naomi's voice carried both warmth and authority, instilling a sense of respect and admiration in her young son and the cowboy. The afternoon passed quietly, filled with work and learning. Naomi helped Tay gather firewood while James helped set up a small cooking area. The three of them worked together seamlessly, each contributing in ways that reflected their strengths. Naomi's guidance ensured that every action was purposeful, every movement careful. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, they had prepared a safe, comfortable space to spend the night. As darkness fell, Naomi lit a small fire. The glow illuminated the canyon walls and cast dancing shadows around their campsite. Tay sat beside her, holding a small cup of water, while James rested nearby, reflecting on the events of the past days. Naomi spoke softly, her voice carrying a sense of calm and reassurance. "Tonight we rest. Tomorrow we will continue our journey, stronger and wiser than before. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to learn and grow." Tay's eyes shone with understanding. He realized that bravery was not simply about facing danger. It was about preparation, trust, and careful action. James nodded quietly, feeling a deep sense of respect for Naomi and the lessons she had taught. He had seen the power of knowledge, patience, and empathy, and he knew that these lessons would guide him long after this journey was over. As the night deepened, Naomi kept a careful watch, ensuring that their fire was small but effective and that they were hidden from any potential threats. She reflected on the journey so far, feeling a mix of pride and relief. They had survived ambushes, learned vital skills, and built bonds of trust that would last a lifetime. Naomi knew that more challenges might come, but she also knew that they were stronger and more prepared than ever before. During a quiet moment, Naomi spoke to James. "You have learned much in a short time, but remember, the desert is always teaching. Observe, listen, and act wisely. Strength alone will not keep you safe." James nodded, realizing that Naomi's words were not just about survival, they were about life itself. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and gratitude for the woman who had guided him and protected them all. Tay, sensing the seriousness in his mother's tone, whispered, "Mama, will we always be safe?" Naomi smiled softly, brushing his hair back. "My little one, we cannot control everything, but we can prepare, learn, and care for one another. That is how we stay strong." Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to act wisely even when we are afraid. Tay's eyes reflected understanding, and he felt a sense of confidence he had never known before. The night passed quietly, the desert calm and serene under the watchful stars. Naomi felt a sense of peace, knowing that they had survived and learned from each challenge. She glanced at Tay, who slept soundly beside her, and at James, whose expression showed both fatigue and admiration. Naomi knew that their journey was far from over, but she also knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. By morning, Naomi had planned their next move. She would guide them to a nearby settlement where James could find work and safety, and where she and Tay could continue their lives without constant fear. She prepared small packs of food and water, ensuring that each step of the journey was carefully planned. Naomi's knowledge of the land and her ability to anticipate challenges gave them confidence as they set out once more. As they traveled, Naomi spoke to Tay and James about the lessons they had learned. She emphasized the importance of courage, patience, and cooperation. "We have faced danger and uncertainty, but we have survived," she said. "Remember this. Life will continue to test you, but knowledge, preparation, and care for others will carry you through." Tay listened intently, and James reflected quietly, realizing the depth of her wisdom. By the time they reached the outskirts of the settlement, Naomi felt a sense of accomplishment. They had survived the challenges of the desert, grown stronger, and learned invaluable lessons. James expressed his gratitude once more, promising to honor the guidance and care Naomi had shown. Naomi smiled, knowing that he had not only learned to survive, but had also learned to respect and trust others, regardless of differences. Tay walked beside his mother, holding her hand tightly. He had grown in courage, patience, and understanding, and Naomi felt a deep sense of pride. She had kept her promise to protect him, to guide him, and to teach him the skills he would need to navigate the world. Together they had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, and had emerged stronger and wiser. As they entered the settlement, Naomi felt a renewed sense of hope. The challenges of the past days had strengthened their bond and prepared them for the future. She knew that life would continue to bring difficulties, but she also knew that courage, wisdom, and compassion would always guide them. Naomi had shown Tay and James that strength was not only in action, but in knowledge, preparation, and the care we show for one another. At the heart of the settlement, Naomi guided James to a place where he could find work and begin to rebuild his life. He thanked her once more, his eyes shining with gratitude. "I will never forget what you have taught me," he said. Naomi nodded, feeling a sense of fulfillment. She had helped another human being and in doing so had reinforced the values of courage, wisdom, and compassion. Tay looked up at his mother, his small hand gripping hers. "Mama," he whispered, "we did it. We were brave and we helped someone too." Naomi smiled, feeling the truth of his words. "Yes, my little one. We faced challenges and we learned that courage is more than fighting. It is thinking, caring, and acting wisely. Never forget that." The sun climbed higher, casting warmth and light across the settlement. Naomi, Tay, and James had survived, grown, and learned. The desert had tested them, but they had endured. Naomi felt hope for the future, pride in her son, and confidence in the lessons they had learned. Together, they had shown that courage, preparation, and kindness could overcome even the harshest challenges. As they prepared to continue their separate paths, Naomi reflected on the journey. She had protected her son, guided a stranger, and faced danger with patience and wisdom. The desert had tested them, but it had also taught them invaluable lessons. Naomi knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she and Tay were ready. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And so, with hearts full of hope and determination, Naomi and Tay walked forward into the new day, ready to face the future together. James followed briefly, carrying with him the lessons of courage, patience, and trust he had learned from the widowed Apache woman and her son. The bonds they had formed, the knowledge they had shared, and the challenges they had overcome would remain with them forever. In the quiet of the morning, under the rising sun, life continued. Naomi and Tay had survived, they had learned, and they had grown. The desert had been harsh, but it had also been a teacher. And through it all, the words Naomi had spoken so many times rang true. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act wisely, with knowledge, preparation, and compassion in the heart.